All right, now that Prisma's set up, we are going to integrate it with our current authentication system. So if you remember here in our Prisma Studio, we have 0 accounts. We don't have anything in our database. We're going to change that. So let's go into our auth route. And we want to import 2 things. First is going to be import Prisma adapter. And this is going to come from our Nuxt Auth's Prisma adapter package that we installed. The next is going to be a Prisma client. And so with this Prisma client, we'll create a new Prisma value and say new Prisma client. And so what we're going to use with this Prisma client is we're going to pass it into our adapter option. As you can see here, you can use the adapter option to pass in your database adapter. So in this case, we have Prisma adapter, and we're going to pass it Prisma. And that's really all it takes. Now we can begin querying against our database. But while we're at it, if you remember, we were using this users object from our fake DB. We're transitioning away from that. So what I want to do instead is actually, we're going to say me is equal to, and we're actually going to interact with this endpoint. So let's actually just create a function, an async function called getMe. And this is going to return, await. And we're going to use the built-in fetch. And this can then hit our API/me. And then we're going to pass it in options. And along here, we actually want to do post. And the reason for that is because we're going to be passing it a body in order to verify user's email. So we can do record, and this is email session. We're going to do a user, and then we're going to say the user's email if it exists. Sorry, we need to pass this session as well. And I'm sorry, TypeScript here, so I'm just going to do any for now. And then, so what we're going to do here is then we're going to say getMe. And we're going to say await is equal to getMe of session. Okay, great. But this isn't going to work just yet because in our me endpoint, first of all, we need to rename it. Instead of just me.get, we're going to do just a me. And so when it's just me, it can handle every CRUD operation. So what are we going to do here? We're going to replace a bit of this. So first we're going to do a const body is equal to await read body. And we're going to pass in this event object. And so what this body ends up becoming is this. We're going to be seeing this object right here. Actually, in fact, I can just delete record now that I think about it. And so we're passing the email over. So body is going to be equal to that. And then instead of this user, we can do const account just to follow suit with our schema is await, and we can do event.context.prisma. So here we are querying Prisma directly, and then we're going to check for accounts and say find first. Find first. And now we can query into this and say where our user, and within this user, their email is equal to the body.email. So this should provide us with our account from our SQLite database. And now we should be able to do if you look into I'm curious, can you click into this? No. So if you look into our schema again, our account should have all of these values. And so in this case, and remember, it's also connected to the user. So I'm curious, actually, let's just return account in this case. And we can now delete this, and let's go, everything should be good here. Let's go back. I'm gonna just go to login on the web app. And again, let's look at our models, nothing. Now if we log in, this is one of the neat aspects of our Prisma provider. If we now look, let's do a refresh. We now have an account, a session, and a user object. So we can click in here and you're gonna see our user IDs, all this data, provider of GitHub, the scope that I've given access to this, and then you can actually now look at the user. And again, that's me, Cody Montague, the email, avatar, as well as the foreign keys that is connected to. So that's pretty neat, right? Let's go back into account. And so I'm passing the entire, let's actually go into protected and see what is protected saying. If data, okay, so we're just passing it data. And so here we're checking, is it subscribed? And if you remember, that takes place here. So the user, let's look back at our web app. In our database, if we find our, so you see how here it's showing is subscribed. On the front end, it's all showing subscribed. So let's actually go back into the schema. Instead of is subscribed, I actually just want it to be subscribed. So let's close this, and we're gonna rerun our Prisma migrate dev, create our migration, and I'm gonna say renaming subscribed. And then we're going to run Prisma migrate generate. Now if we run Prisma Studio again, let's do a refresh. It's now subscribed rather than is subscribed. So that should actually apply immediately. So if we click on this and say true, save. Oh, no, something went wrong. Okay, so what went wrong here is rather than passing the entire account, I was actually passing the object of the account. So I just want to pass this, just the account, not surrounded. And now if we go back, let's do a refresh. Okay, interesting. So it's saying there wasn't a session. So let's just try and relog in here. If there's no session, that's interesting. Why is there no session? All right, so coming back to this, I remember actually seeing this solved a different way. And so we're gonna implement that. So we're actually gonna delete this server-side session logic. And instead, what we can do here is we're going to extract this. We're gonna have a me.get, and we're also gonna have a me.post.ts. For now, I'll just copy it over. But in the me.post, I explicitly want to delete this session information. Okay? And then what we're gonna do is we're going to, instead of checking off the session, we're going to check off of an environment variable. I'm going to assume that the only person ever calling a me.post is going to be right here within this function, within the server, essentially. And so what we can do in that case is we can call within this function, we can add an environmental variable. And let me show you how. I'm going to pass it in as a query, and we're going to call it our API route secret. And in this, it's going to be runtime.config, and I'm going to call it API route.secret. Now, we don't have this yet, and so let's just add it. We're going to add it into our config process.m.API route secret, and then we're also going to create this in our .m file. See, I already have it here. So the way I create this is I'm going to use this command from the auth0 docs, which creates a random string using the crypto library. So we'll do crypto.randomBytes. We'll make this 32.toString of hex. Now, if you run this, it should create a secure token that we can query against. Now that we have that, we're going to add this to our internal queries, our internal fetch requests, and then we can check against it. So to get that query, we can say const query is equal to await get query of event. And we're also going to pull in our runtime config to check. So we can do if query dot, oops, what do we name it? .m for our API route secret is not equal to our runtime config.API route secret, we can just throw an error. So we'll call this create error. And we'll do a status code of 401 and a status message and just say you are not authorized to call this API. And so that will make sure this post request is secure. Basically, it's saying the only one able to post against the /me route is our own server. For now, that's probably fine if we just delete get and just maintain the data flow between client and server through our use auth instead. So if we go to protected, we just manage the session data through here. Okay, and there you have it. So if you see, we are able to get the user data, and then we're actually checking, we're maintaining this subscribe variable or value based off of the database value. So here if we go into protected, it's saying subscribed is true, and then we have our conditional that we added a while ago. So let's check here in the database. If we now say subscribed is false and save, let's look right over, and now we see subscribed is false. So again, we'll move that back to saved, and there you go. Authentication logic, subscription logic connected to Prisma and a database. Hope you learned something today, and looking forward to seeing you in the next. Take care.